Hey, what's up, Facebook family? What's up, brothers? Welcome to My Life Monday with me, Mike, your mentor. If you're watching the replay, welcome as well. Appreciate you guys joining in every day as you usually do. If you're new to this page, welcome. This page is a resource, right? A resource for men who want to better themselves as fathers, who want to better themselves as husbands, and as men in their community. All we have to do is take a look what's going on outside in the world today, and we can see that all this craziness is a direct reflection of men not answering their higher calling in their life and the responsibility that's been placed on them as husbands, fathers, and members of the community. And this page really came about because I had really been disobedient for 3 years. God had put this on my heart for some time, but I kept ignoring it. And really, the tipping point for me was, I think it was a year or 2 years ago, we had Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, the chef, commit suicide. And these are people, right, that were supposed to have their lives all together. You know, they had all this money, they could buy all these material things, and they were supposed to be happy. But yet, for whatever reason, they decided to take their lives. And it was really bothering me because my brother took his life when I was a sophomore in college. And I don't know, it just stirred something in my heart. And I was asking God about it. And he said to me, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, remember that idea I gave you? And that was really the tipping point for me to move forward with this. And my goal is to come to this page every day with something new that would help equip you in your journey as a man, as a father, and as a husband. And primarily from two areas, right? So the first area is looking back on my own life and seeing how, and asking myself, how was I able to be born into the situation that I was born into and go through all these traumatic things in my childhood and my early adult years and come out on the other side and have my own family, be productive. Not to say that I'm perfect. If you've been with me at all, and if you go back and you watch some of these videos, there's some very vulnerable and real stuff about some huge mistakes that I made in my life. But looking back on that, and asking the question, why was it possible for me to do these things? And it came down to two main things. One, the grace of God. Without God, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't be doing these things. Life is a blessing. Every day is a blessing, and I don't take that for granted. And two, I had mentors in my life. Mentors in the books that I was reading, and mentors in my life personally, men who held me to a higher standard, who encouraged me, who sowed into my life, some on big levels, some on small levels, from taking me to lunch or just hanging out with me after practice and letting me know that I had what it took, to letting me cry on their shoulder, and them just comforting me, and letting me know that to keep fighting the good fight and to not give up, no matter what the circumstances were. And that gave me hope, right? That gave me encouragement. It let me know that if these guys in the books that I was reading about, they could overcome, that I could overcome. That it also showed me that there was more to life than what I was able to realize living in this tiny little bubble, looking through this keyhole of what my life entailed at that time, that there were greater things out there in life for me to experience, besides the chaos that was going on in my own little world. And they planted these seeds in my heart. So this page is an attempt to pass that on, right? To take all that wisdom that's been sowed into me through these circumstances, and by these other people investing in me, and to do that for other guys, because I know what it's like to be down in that pit, right? And not know if you can go another day, and just needing someone to come alongside you or stick their hand down in that pit and say, I got you, brother. I'm here for you. whatever you need. You know, you need me to listen. Okay, you need a helping hand in some area of your life. Uh, I got you. I'll do what I can. And that's important. We all need people in our lives who are like that. And a lot of men, they don't have people in their lives like that because we isolate ourselves for a multitude of stupid reasons. A lot of which is we buy into this lie that we can't be vulnerable, that we can't tell the truth because people will judge us. And in that judgment, we will be rejected because every man, well, every person, but especially men, we want to be chosen, whether that's chosen by our wives, whether that's chosen by our Creator, whether that's chosen by the other people that we come in contact with each and every day. And it's a strong desire. And if those desires aren't met in healthy ways, we seek unhealthy ways to take care of that, whether drugs, alcohol, pornography, etc. So that's just I guess a 3-4 minute summary as to why this page exists. And I hope you continue to follow me along in this journey. So today for My Life Monday, I thought I'd do a little something different. My Life Monday is all about me sharing my life and what's been going on. You know, and I struggle with these days, but because I don't like talking about myself, I don't know. But I thought I would do something a little bit different in that I would bring you guys into my world, and I want to share with you guys some of the resources, some of the books that have made a huge difference in my life over these last couple of years. I used to be a super avid reader. I would try to read, at least a good 10 pages every single day. I know that seems like a little amount, but when you do it every single day, that just compounds, and I'd read numerous books each year. And that I've kind of got away from that. I want to get back to that, and I need to be better in my discipline at doing that. But I want to share some of these that have made a difference in my life with you guys. So just dusting this one off because it's been on my shelf for a while in no particular order. So this first one is Stark Raving Obedience by Isaiah Coleman and Ted Coleman. And I was actually given this to me by one of my mentors, one of the pastors at my church who's been a mentor of mine since I was 15. And I was in his office and we were just talking, and I seen this book, right? Because wherever I go, if I see people have books, I'm all about it. I'm over there checking them out and asking them questions. And I was asking him, hey, so what's the deal with this book? And it turns out two guys in my church, a father and a son, wrote that. But right, this is all about being obedient to what God is calling you to and what God is telling you each and every day. And if I'm transparent, there's times where God has been like, hey, go pray for that person or go ask that person how they're doing. And I won't listen because maybe I'm scared of that. Well, I know I'm scared of being possibly rejected. And sometimes I've had courage where I've done crazy things like run up to people. I can think of this instance where there was a time where I just heard this message about God shows up in the chaos and to look for opportunities where chaos is ensuing, and there God will want to do crazy things. And I had just heard that, and so I go to this store with somebody, and sure enough, here comes this lady out of this store. I mean, she's crying, she's like mumbling all this stuff under her breath, and her eyes are bleeding, and I'm like, okay, this ain't right. Something's going on. And I walk up to her, and I'm like, hey, ma'am, are you okay? And she's crying, and she's like, no. She's like, she's got all this, what is it called? Scales, I think it is, or psoriasis, all in her eyes, right? And her eyes are like kind of shut and swollen, and she's like, I can't see, and my psoriasis, and she's like, it hurts so bad. And I'm like, okay, God, like, here we go. You presented me with this opportunity. What am I going to do with it? So I just asked her if I could pray for her, and she was like, yeah, I'd really appreciate that. So we prayed for her that she would have peace, and the pain would go away, and God would remove the psoriasis from, I think that's the right word, from around her eyes. And no miracle took place. She thanked me for being willing to do that. She was obviously more at peace and calm, and she went on her way. I don't know what happened, but that's just an instance of being obedient. So this book, though, is all about those things. And to give you a little insight, this book starts off with a crazy story. and it's about God telling, I think it's the dad. The dad takes this challenge and he says, all right, I think it's for 30 days. He's like, God, I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do, no matter how crazy it sounds. And he says that the first thing God told him to do was to get in his car and drive. So he gets in his car and he starts to drive. And God's like, all right, I want you to go to this 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven in your town. So he goes to the 7-Eleven, he goes in, he looks around, it's just the guy behind the counter and it's just him. And God's like, I want you to go stand on your head over by this pop machine. And he's like, that's the stupidest, craziest thing I've ever heard. Why would I go do that? And God's like, did you not say you do whatever I told you to for the next 30 days? And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And he goes and he stands on his head by this pop machine. And all of a sudden he hears crying, uncontrollable crying. And God's like, okay, that's enough. And he gets up and he goes to the counter, and it's the guy behind the counter, right? This younger kid. And he's sobbing hysterically. And he's like, why are you crying? And he's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And he's like, what? Why are you crying? And he's like, I literally 5 minutes ago prayed to God and said, God, prove to me you're real. Send someone in here to stand on their head next to the pop machine. Otherwise, I'm going to kill myself. And you came in and you stood on your head next to the pop machine. I mean, so his book's like examples of all those types of crazy type stuff, right? So game changer right here. It's book number 1. The next book is The Power of Potential by Edwin Lewis Cole, and he's kind of one of the OGs of personal self-improvement for men, in that the movement, right back in the, I think it was the 60s and 70s is when he came about. But there, I mean, is so much good stuff in here. And actually, this wasn't my book. This was given to me by another brother, T-Bone. What up? If you ever watch these, appreciate you sharing this with me. And it's just filled with a lot of good stuff. Like this chapter, Is God Mad at You? I think a lot of people think God's mad at them, right? They don't take the time to ask God that question and to seek the real answer. And I think it would surprise a lot of people, especially men. You know, there's a section in here, master your passion, right? God's given us all passions, things to be passionate about. And are we going to master them? You know, and I can relate to that. I was telling someone earlier today, you know, my passion growing up, since I was like in 8th grade, it was basketball, right? I just wanted to get better. I really sucked. As I practiced more, I fell in love with it. I started to see progression, and I really loved it. And then I haven't had something like that in a long time, and I started this business about 6 months ago, marketing services for some people, and that passion for something is coming back, right? Like where I can't get enough of it, where I want to do more and more each and every day. Do you want to come say hi? Because I know you just get it over with. Say hi.
Hello.
Okay, we love your hat. Thank you. Jesse, before you go to bed.
I'm actually eating dinner.
Okay, we'll eat dinner. Love you. Okay. All right, after that brief interruption, this other section, right? It's in your mouth. Which talks about the power of your words, right? The power of your words, the power that they have over you, the power that they have over other people. So this thing is chocked full of great stuff that all men should know. All right, there's that one. You know you want a hat like that, Mike? All right, here's the next one. Let me see. Okay, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Right, and if you don't know who Brene Brown is, I think I want to say she's a psychologist, or maybe she was a therapist, somewhere along there. But she was, you know, I think she was running a group, and she was studying people, and she was studying vulnerability. And what she found is that people who are willing to be honest with themselves and open with themselves and with others lead a much more fulfilling life. And I've seen this play out in my life repetitively over the last couple of years, to the point where it's kind of crazy, right? Like what I've noticed is I'll get in these groups of men, and, you know, guys will be like this and they'll size each other up, and they may ask questions, that are wrapped up in identity, like, oh, what do you do for work? What kind of car do you drive? Where do you live? Right? Like, all these questions are a form of measuring sticks that guys take out to compare themselves against others. But then once you get past all the surface BS and you start to go deeper, if you ask a tough question, usually in a group of guys, no one's going to give an answer, right? But the crazy thing is the first guy who's willing to put it on the line and be open, transparent, and vulnerable, he acts as like a battering ram, and those walls come down, and all of a sudden, all the other guys are like, "Hey, this person was brave enough to put it out there. If he's brave enough to put it out there, I guess I can be brave enough to put it out there. He wasn't run over by a bus. He wasn't eaten alive. He wasn't mocked and ridiculed uncontrollably, right? So it gives other people hope, gives other people courage and the freedom to open up. All right, the next book is John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, right? Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. Every man should read this. I would dare to say every woman should read this if you really want to know what's going on with your husband and what's at the core of a man. I mean, this book is so powerful. It's required reading for this thing called Quest that I go and help facilitate on, and it's groundbreaking. I'm just looking at some of my notes in here, right? So this section is talking about the questions that haunt every man, right? And I got here written a question to me is, how do I fight for my wife? Right? What a powerful question. How do you fight for your wife? I was talking to somebody, a guy that I'm mentoring, and he was telling me the story about his family and how in his family growing up, right, the conversation that he would hear from his dad, from his uncles, from his grandmas, is they would make belittling and derogatory jokes towards the women in their family and the women that they were around, and it was to make light of these things, to get a laugh, right? So he grew up in this environment, and then he gets married, right, and then he finds himself doing this with his wife, right, and as they move along in their marriage, finally his wife comes to him and confides in him, and there's a lot of resentment there, and says, you've never stuck up for me, you've never fought for me. And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you let your uncles and your dad and all these men in your family not only make derogatory and inappropriate jokes about women, but they've done it about me, and you've never once said anything or stuck up for me, right? So that's an example, right? Like, how do you fight for your wife? How do you fight for your wife's honor? Let me see if I got anything else in here that jumps out at me a minute. It's just good, right? It talks about forgiveness, the power of forgiveness. It talks about the power of surrender in a man's life. It talks about what we talk a lot about on Fridays, right? Healing these wounds that come from our childhood. It talks about finding your inner strength and what that really looks like. Dude, this book, this rocks guys' worlds. It rocked my world the first time I read it. And just hearing from other guys as they go through it, on this men's retreat that I serve on, or that I'm privileged to serve on, I should say, it rocks their worlds. It talks about the section's called Eve's wounds, but really it's talking about the wounds that women experience, right? And as men, we don't ever stop to think about that stuff, right? And it's like the thing that you say, you don't know what you don't know. Do you know what's the deep cry of every little girl's heart? What would you guess? It's their relationship with their father, and just what an important role that plays, right? And it goes further than that, right? It's every woman's need to know that she is exquisite and exotic and chosen, right? This is the core to her identity, the way she bears the image of God. Will you pursue me? Do you delight in me? Will you fight in me? Or will you fight for me? And like every little boy, she has taken a wound as well. The wound strikes right at the core of her heart of beauty and leaves a devastating message with it. No, you're not beautiful. And no, no one will really fight for you. Like your wound, hers almost always comes at the hand of her father. Dude, you ain't got this book? Amazon, overnight shipping, get it done. All right, the next book that's made a huge difference in my life was given to me on my wedding. I didn't touch it for years, right? And we used to do this before this page started, but every February, right, we'd honor our wives with the whole month of February. Anybody can do Valentine's Day, right? You want to honor your wife. You want to build your marriage up. You pray for your wife, and you dedicate time to doing that. And self-disclaimer, I'm horrible at praying with my wife. Like some people, they pray with their wives before they go to bed. They pray with their wives before they get up. You know, if my wife says she needs prayer, I got no problem praying with her. Do I make an intentional effort at times to pray with her? No, not good enough. But this book, The Power of a Praying Husband by Stormy O'Meriton. The last couple of years we've done through the month of February, 28 days of prayer for our wives. And this is the book that I would use. You pray about her relationships, her submission, her marriage, her motherhood, her emotions, her spirit. I mean, there's a ton of good stuff in here. Highly recommend it. It's made a huge difference in my marriage. Because you got to remember, we're not fighting a physical war, right? It's a spiritual war where there's things going on inside of us and inside our wives that just manifest themselves physically and verbally in the way that we treat each other. All right, so this next book, it's different, but I read this in the last 3 or 4 years, and the message is extremely powerful, and it's I guess it would be fiction. I'm not good with my genres, right? So it's actually a parable, and it's Life's Golden Ticket by Brendan Burchard, and it's a story about a guy who is his fiance is I believe it's his fiance. Yeah, his fiance is on life support or in the hospital. Maybe she was in a coma. And he's presented with this ticket to go to this carnival. And at this carnival, he meets a different set of characters who basically take him back through his life and, some of the events that happened to him and show him how those have shaped his life. And it all culminates in the end where him going through one final ride and it giving him a choice to make a difference in his life and to choose a better way moving forward. And it's extremely powerful, right? It's very well written. It's one of those books that once you start, like it's good at making you not want to put it down. You want to just keep reading it, and the message is really good. Let me see here. Thought maybe on the back it had a little synopsis I could read to you, but it doesn't. But highly recommend it. Next book. Oh man. All right. So the next book is John Ortberg. If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat, right? And it's a book built around the story in the Bible of Jesus walking on water. And I believe it's Peter that he calls out of the boat to walk on the water with him. And it's just how the story applies to your life and the principles from that story. And there's actually a pretty crazy story behind this book. You know, man, me and my wife were just having one of those times where we were just fighting, man, a lot, and I was pretty beat up. For some reason, we got invited to this thing at someone's church. And basically, there was these pastors there, and God was going to give them a word of knowledge or something prophetic to speak over people, right? And if you don't, if you're not a believer or whatever, a word of knowledge is where God tells you something about a person that there's no way you could have otherwise known about, whether it's something that happened in their childhood, could be like what there's, I mean, I've seen it be where what their social security number is, right? It's just, God showing himself to be real by revealing to whoever's around something about a certain person that no one else could know, especially since they don't know that person. And then a prophetic word is something for your life that God has for you. So we go to this kind of this like this service, excuse me, and it's a normal service. And then at the end, these pastors are going to do their thing. So they're praying and they're listening to God. And I had went there with the full expectation that God was going to tell me something. Didn't know what it was, but I needed something because I was at the end of my rope. And I thought what I was going to get was one thing, but God definitely had another thing for me. And the guy, I was wearing a blue shirt, and the guy said, "This is for the guy in the back with the blue shirt. Stand up, sir." And kind of like everybody else, I'm like, "Oh, me? Are you talking to me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you. Stand up." Um, and he's like, "You're going through something right now, or God's telling me that you're going through something right now, and He has something for your life." And he says, only you know what this means, but God's telling me that if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. And what that meant to me at that time was I was really struggling with taking a leap of faith in something and moving forward in doing that. So that really resonated with me, right? And the whole story about having faith and getting out of the boat and being able to do something miraculous or something great. And the guy was like, he's like, "I also want to let you know there's a book by that same title. You need to get it." So I went home and I bought this book, and I read it, and it was eye opening, very eye opening for me and applicable at that time of my life. Um, and it's applicable now, right? Every day. If I want to be able to do something great, I got to be able to be courageous and get out of the boat and walk on water. All right, we got 2 more books here, and then we'll be done. Next one is called Every Man's Marriage by Stephen Arterburn and Fred Stoker. Here's this book. Okay. Now, I'll read you a little bit about the back. So it says, "What every man wishes he knew about what his wife desires most." Authors Stephen Arterburn and Fred Stoker believe that every man can meet the secret desire of his wife. The problem is most of us aren't exactly sure what that desire is and how we can go about fulfilling it faithfully. In Every Man's Marriage, you can discover the common misconceptions about what it means to exercise biblical authority and understand the role of submission in the marriage relationship. This groundbreaking book can help men grasp and apply essential but often overlooked principles for marital leadership. Through candid reflections on their personal struggles to achieve biblical unity in their own marriages, along with many years of combined experience in marital counseling, Arterburn and Stoker apply solid, time-tested biblical wisdom to the everyday potential distortions that can lead to strife in a marriage. The second book in the Every Man series is the perfect follow-up to the best-selling Every Man's Battle, Every Man's Marriage. In that book, Every Man's Battle and Every Man's Marriage is about pornography and lust, and how that affects your marriage, uh, you know, um, on all types of levels. So I'll give you an idea. I'll read some of the table of contents in here and let you know what that looks like. Who wrote that? Oh yeah, that's who gave this to me. A guy in my men's group, a really cool guy, Tad Schenke. Uh, Tad's an awesome dude. He's actually, if you know Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins, uh, Date with Destiny, all that. Tad is like Anthony Robbins' right hand man. Um, so I mean, he knows a lot of people, very prolific guy, but with just a great heart. And he gave me this book. So thanks, Tad. If you ever see this. All right, so it's got topics on. Ooh, this is a good one for some people I know who watch this. How did the feeling die? Right, that feeling of love that you feel inside your marriage. Also, trampling the one you love. I know who I'm giving this book to. From trampling to submitting, pursuing your woman's desires, facing the top 10 love chillers, leading as a bond servant. Don't leave sex to your feelings. Oh, that's a good one. No trampling this bed. And then some other good stuff on like minding your kids' spiritual growth and enjoy serving with a passion. It's been a number of years since I've read this, probably 10. But this is a good guide. Every guy should get. So I encourage you. If this spoke to you tonight, go out and get this. All right, and then here's the last one. I've actually been reading this little by little over the last couple of months, but it's something that I struggle with, right? And this one is called Boundaries in Marriage by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And this book is awesome, man. It's been really good for me. Because if I'm honest, at times I have horrible boundaries. Horrible boundaries with my wife. And that is not her fault. That is my fault. So this book does a good job of explaining to you what healthy boundaries are inside of a marriage. There's also awesome examples from, the names and stuff are changed, but that came from real situations where these guys counseled couples. And you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, I don't know. Do you have boundaries in your marriage? Did you ever think about that? Do you think that's appropriate? Do you think that that's important? Like, before, I had some little bit of chaos going in my relationship, I never would have picked this book up. But, I mean, I saw it, it spoke to me, opened it up, checked out some things in here, and I picked it up, and it's been really good. It's been really healthy. There's great questions that you need to ask yourself. Here, I'll give you a little example, right? So here's some of the table of contents. What you value is what you'll have, right? What you value is what you'll have. Value 1, love of God. Value 2, love of your spouse. Value 3, honesty. That one right to my heart, if you know what I've shared previously about my relationship with my wife. Value 4, faithfulness. Value 5, compassion and forgiveness. Value 6, holiness. And here's the cool thing too is this part 3, right? Resolving conflict in marriage. 3's a crowd. Protecting your marriage from intruders. 6 kinds of conflict. Resolving conflict with a boundary-loving spouse. Resolving conflict with a boundary-resistant spouse. And that's where all the practical examples come in. And I could relate to a lot of those on a lot of different levels, right? So definitely recommend this book if you want to be invested in your marriage and you want to get the most out of it. That is a good resource. So I've kept you guys long enough. I hope you guys found some utility out of these recommendations, and I hope that you would be a practitioner, whether it's these books or some other books. Right? We should be lifelong learners. We should be students of our marriage, students of our wives. students of the different things that we have stewardship over: money, finances, relationships, a career, etc. So I love you guys. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, or you can send me a DM. If you need prayer, you know how to get at me, same way. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for Tuesday Thoughts. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.